our latest episode of Alienation, the podcast that brings you tales from the rock and roll underworld, features Andy Hughes from Deathwave Entertainment, Merseyside promoter, who amongst other things brings you metal to the masses Merseyside. I'm here with Andy from Deathwave. Andy, how are you?
I am good, sir. Yourself?
Not bad at all. Not bad at all. So look, we're new to each other. We met, but days ago at one of the heats for M2. Well, how do we pronounce it? What do we call it? M2M.
It's metal to the masses, which of course it's quite a mouthful. So M2M is what we normally shorten it to. Right. Yeah.
And from a We're All Aliens point of view, it's very interesting because it was your first time over the water.
Well, not my first time in my life, but like first time doing a gig, like, you know, so it was a bit of an experience for me. Like,
and Molly's Chambers, really hot night. It had pleasing Wayne's World vibes about it. I don't know about you.
Oh, see, I just get that everywhere I go, but that's just like I try and live the rock and roll life.
And you didn't have to book the shitty Beatles to do it.
No.
And what were the Beatles like? Oh, you know, shitty.
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing this?
I've been around the event scene in one form or another. Most of my adult life, and I'm getting on a bit now. Like I'm like 41, which is horrifying. Yeah, but like
your butterpup, sir, butterpup.
Working bars, doing doors, stuff like that. I wasn't actively part of the event, but I was there, and I got to see, and then I don't know if you remember Sal used to run Whiplash back in the day. I was a regular at her gigs and stuff, and I got to know most of the bands, got to know her, and I started helping her out with just like doing a door and stuff like that, and just little things. And then I potted around for a good good few years. Mostly it was me I go to anything any band was performing, just there's a band on site, yes, I'm there, 4 or 5 nights a week. Some weeks I'd be going to gigs, local gigs, Manchester, whatever. Yeah. And then there was a bit of I'll say a coalescence of several factors over the course of about 6 or 7 months, maybe late 2010.
Okay.
Sal she hadn't announced it at this point because I used to do bits for her, and she kind of started saying to the team, my health's not great, so I'm thinking about like knocking it in the head kind of thing. I love doing it, but this plus a full-time job and all the rest of it, like, yeah. Also, like I'd been to, of all things, I went to see Machine Head, I think it was. Okay. It was either Machine Head or Fear Factory, I can't remember which. There was lots of alcohol involved. But I remember not long after Sal had said that she was thinking about retiring, and then I'd gone to this gig in Manchester. I'd paid me train fare. I bought me ticket, bought me booze, missed me train home. Ended up stranded in a Piccadilly station until I had to buy another ticket for the first one in the morning. I got told off by I can't remember if they were police or security or whatever, booted me out and had to wander around. And this was about November. It was freezing and all that. And I was like, you know what? I love this. Why the fuck do I do this to myself? I've spent a small fortune, and I'm feeling pretty miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I ain't coming to Manchester. You're fucking Manx. Any Manx listening, ignore that. But
Well, to be fair, Andy, I should imagine that any Mancunian who's ever been stuck at a Liverpool gig, vice versa, probably feels the same way.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we're a pretty collective community in the rock and metal scene, but those things go out of the window on a cold November night.
Oh,
it's funny. I wonder how many gig-going punters have been in that very situation. I know, I mean, to digress, just to come back, just to digress briefly, I can tell you a very, very similar story. Going to, do you remember when, you're probably too young to remember when Living Colour first broke. I was a big band for me growing up, Living Colour.
Yeah.
And when they started becoming a headline act, I mean, I saw Living Colour support Anthrax. And I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure I'm pretty sure I saw them supporting the Stones. But then I saw them on Oxford Road at the
Yeah.
old Manchester Uni.
Yeah.
And I was still in sixth form at this time. You know, I was a butter pup. And we thought we got the right train, right? But it
Yeah.
turned out that it was the postal train.
Oh
Right,
my
and
God.
we rolled into Lime Street at about 4 a.m. My mum was furious, right, and we were neither here. We're neither Arthur nor Martha. We might as
Yeah.
well have missed the train completely for all the
Yeah.
did. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, pick up the story. So there you are.
So anyway, so yeah, I'd had this. Not the first time it happened, but I said it with it being like a cold November and it snowed and everything. I was just like, oh, this is just I'm not happy. And then I'd also seen a band a few weeks later. Me and the girl I was dating went to see this band called This Is Turin, who are still knocking around. I remember it was me, my girlfriend at the time, and about four people, and they put on one of the most devastating live performances I have ever seen to
It's
like
often the
six
way,
people.
isn't it?
And I was just like, you know what? This band deserves somebody to stand up there and scream their name because they've just ripped my face off. And it felt like they literally walked up to me and ripped my face off because I was the only fucking person there to have their face ripped off. And I was like, yeah, we need to do something about this. And then just after Christmas, I literally lay in bed about 2 o'clock in the morning and I actually poked the girlfriend and I said, do you know, I've got this really stupid idea. And she's like, well, half asleep said, I'm going to start my promotions company. And she's like, should have gone to sleep. I'm like, no, I got up I said, lay there, could think about a couple more hours, got up, and about 4 o'clock in the morning, logged in, bought a domain name and all sorts and stuff like that. And actually, just from a coalescence of several things swishing around over a
Yeah.
couple of months in my head. And I thought, yeah, someone needs to do this. With Sal retiring, yeah,
So that was 20. That was about 2010.
about 20 early 2011 I actually like set it up kind of thing.
So there's a real legacy thing here, isn't there? Because you picked up the baton in one sense because Sal was retiring, but
Yeah,
it was almost a sort of a forced insistence because
yeah,
you'd had a kind of an intervention had taken place, hadn't it?
yeah,
Yeah, the need to see this band, you know, do something better than see five people getting a face melting gig, but also
yeah,
being stuck in Manchester. So there was kind of a three-pronged attack on that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But for you, there was no like a band background or anything like that.
No.
You
It
were
was
just
just
a
it was
fan.
it was just the fact that with Sal retiring and with I said being fed up. Why did Manchester get all the gigs? And like the only person I know who do good metal gigs in Liverpool is going to stop. And
Yeah.
then I said there was this band, and I was like, do you know what? Yeah, somebody. I didn't not the term picking up a baton, but like in hindsight, yeah, that is. I think that's pretty much what I did. But it was kind of like
And
we can't let this. The scene's nowhere near as strong as Manchester in that regard already. We can't let it die completely. It
so
just can't. I can't allow it.
so let's just talk about the scene for a minute. I mean, I know we're going to jump all over the place, I'm sure, in this
Yeah,
conversation, but the scene in Merseyside. I mean, I've had a conversation with Ned Hassan about metal on Merseyside and that stuff, and obviously, I it goes back a long way. The metal, the rock and metal scene
oh, it does. Yeah,
but you're very much a kind of I think, quite a pivotal figure in that period, as you've just said. So post 2010. Do you think that the scene has been quite linear in that time frame, or do you think it's gone in peaks and troughs? I mean, I wonder whether or not, and as I develop the podcast, I wonder whether I'm going to hear more stories about the troughs as much as the peaks. That very period before you started Deathwave was the new metal scene, wasn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there was a big sort of momentum built from that,
yeah.
right? So do you see it as a kind of a nice sort of steady thing that maintains its own momentum, or do you see the big kind of peaks and troughs? What's your view on that?
That is it's a weird thing, because the answer is both, because it depends what context you're talking about. Because as I said, I'm what I call a lifer. You're probably a lifer. And I think going back to the new metal thing, and that I know like what Ned, you were saying about Ned. I don't know. I know when I don't know if your show, you said you'd recorded an interview
Yeah,
with
we
Ned.
recorded an
I,
interview with Ed, yeah.
yeah, I don't know if it's gone out. Yeah, I must have been. I haven't even looked,
Hasn't
but
gone out yet,
no,
actually.
but
We did it as a pilot, to be fair.
yeah,
I mean, and I think, without digressing too much, what I want to speak to Ned about what's happened with the launch of the archive, because I think there might be more to tell about that. So it might be kind of a condensed thing, So I haven't really
yeah.
decided. I'm sort of sitting on it before I speak to Ned. But sorry, anyway.
Oh yeah. Oh no, no. But basically, I was going to say, because I met Ned through doing my shows and stuff, because he started coming to some of them, and he was like, I want to have a word with you, and I was like, I'm writing a book about Liverpool's metal scene. I was like, oh yeah, great. And then I know he gave me a copy when it came out, and it's fascinating, and like
Mm,
you know, I really loved where the bit where he does like a deep dive all the way back to like the 70s. And the irony is he talks about a place called the Moonstone,
right.
um, in as one of the rock bars back in the day. And ironically, my mum and dad used to go drinking in the Moonstone before they were married, and obviously before I was a twinkle in anybody's eye.
Yeah.
Um, and there's like a cracking story about how my mum's got a big metal rod in her leg, because they both, but this is back when drink driving wasn't quite frowned on the way it is these days. And coming back from the Moonstone on my dad's motorcycle, absolutely pissed as farts.
Oh, no.
They had a spill and smashed my mum's leg. And of
Wow.
all things, they used, get this, they used the insurance money to put the deposit on their first house,
No,
which
that's
is the
rock and
house
roll.
I was born into.
That's very
But,
rock and roll. So your parents
yeah.
were bikers,
Oh yeah.
right?
And it was I'm gonna let you, and it was little old me, about 7 or 8 years old, stealing my dad's records, which kind of set me off on the path I am now.
right. So this is something that always comes up, right? So we've kind of naturally got into the sort of the how did you get into rock music per se? So actually, in
Yeah,
your case, it was your parents' record collection,
yeah.
right? Right. Okay. So we're talking late 70s, early 80s record
But
collection.
we're talking, yeah, mid 80s.
Mid
Uh,
80s. Okay,
uh,
so what does that record collection look like at that time? What were the things that were you pilfering out and
uh,
not putting back in the plastic sleeves in the alphabetical order?
I think I threw away some of them plastic slips away, which I'm sure I got told off for.
I
But
bet
no,
you.
it was stuff like there was a couple of Judas Priest ones,
Okay.
not the whole thing, just a couple. There was lots of Alice Cooper, lots of Queen, bit of Led Zeppelin. Think there was a oh, a Motorhead one, and then there was also stuff like the really early super proggy Genesis and stuff like that.
Right.
Um, I said my dad was a lot of prog, and then some of like the early proper heavy. Well, I'm fairly certain there was a Black Sabbath one as well, but it wasn't like Black Sabbath. I think it was one of the later ones.
Yeah.
But we've never been able to find it, so it might have either my dad took it back and hid it so well we didn't find it, or I don't know if I broke it or I don't know. I said I was only a kid.
And did you find your tribe at primary school or at secondary school in terms of like that? Like, I mean, we talk about amongst my friends, like this is something that comes up all the time. We had older brothers, right? And they were all rockers, right? So whilst I would, I'm more than happy to share with you my devotion to Adam Ant, because he was like
Yeah,
a big thing for me. But Adam Ant came from
yeah,
a punk rock background, so
yeah.
and those churches all merge at some point. I mean,
Oh, they do. Yeah,
if you talk to I know Paul Gray from the Damned,
yeah.
and Paul plays bass in the Damned, and when he goes to America, they're considered a rock band. They're not considered a punk band.
Oh,
There's no differentiation. Laurent in our band has just been to Hellfest because he's
yeah.
from France, and Generation Sex are on the bill, with the extreme sound and all of that stuff. So I think where we find our interest in hard rock and metal, I always think that there's something that lights the spark, and in your case it was your parents. In my case it was my older brother, and then we sort of find our way and meet like-minded people. So your tribe, I'm assuming that would have developed at school, secondary school.
No, no. Mine was quite bizarre because my I went Broad Green in Liverpool, which is well, when I was in secondary school, Tupac and
Oh, okay.
Snoop Dogg and all that, all
Yeah.
the
Hip hop.
tail end, the hip hop and the like all the hard house and all the trance and stuff were like at their peak of their game. We're talking, I said, I was in secondary school 92 to 98, which is as basically at that point, that is like Nirvana and stuff. They were that was the tail end of the big rock, and that didn't do it for me whatsoever.
So you weren't in
I
grunge.
No, I bypassed the grunge thing completely. So I discovered, I said, I jumped from my dad's records to of all I don't even I've developed a love of a couple of like kind of semi-random things. Like my dad didn't particularly, I don't remember my dad having any Aerosmith, but I acquired some Aerosmith song. I love that. But also
Yeah.
Metallica. Metallica was absolutely massive for me
Yeah.
in my early teens and stuff. But no one in school was particularly into rock or metal. I had a couple of friends who I'd literally known since I was like in junior school, and I
Mhm.
kind of coerced them into have some rock music. Listen to this. And we've all now grown up and we're all metalheads now, but I definitely pushed it on them, kind of thing.
I mean, I think
Um,
I think it's interesting what you're saying there, because you mentioned like techno and things like that. That's quite an extreme music in itself,
it is, yeah,
and then hip hop. I mean, I love hip hop, and but I like old school hip hop, and I love where the trajectory of where it's gone. But I was always most fascinated with the crossover between hip hop and rock.
yeah.
And for me, because I like funk as well, the sort of crossroads between those three genres, funk, rock, and hip hop, I think has been really, really interesting. I like groove, and I do think that you I can hear a lot of hip hop influences in our band.
Yeah.
Even though we're a melodic rock band, but it's interesting that that grunge wasn't for you. You know,
No, I said I kind of went from like a lot of the what these days would call like the like the cock rock or the ARR or whatever.
like the hair
And
metal.
yeah, the hair metal and stuff. Not that I knew it was hair metal. It was just yeah, it was like rock or whatever. Actually, I had major love for Meatloaf as well.
Oh yeah, you ever see him play?
And then oh
You ever see him play?
no,
Meet.
no, no, I never did.
I
which
saw
is sad.
Meatloaf get bottled off at the '88 Reading Festival. A legendary
Yeah.
gig. Yeah, yeah. Show my age
Oh
there.
dear. Yeah. But
Sorry, go on, I interrupted
I
you.
don't know, then Metallica, and then from there, I dabbled a little bit with some of the like thrash stuff,
Hmm.
like the bit of Slayer, and then maybe I want to say about 95. Uh, I was stood in H11V in the rock and metal section in town on Lord Street,
Yeah.
uh, clutching my pocket money, thinking, "Oh, what do I want to buy?" And there was this album with a cover that was completely unlike anything else. It was black with just this screaming face in white, and I couldn't even read the logo. And it turned out to be this little known album called Transylvanian Hunger by this band called Mayhem.
Right.
And I bought it because I was intrigued, because I said the album was the artwork is completely unlike anything else in the section. The song titles were like, whoa, what's that going on about? Like, I need to take this home and listen to it. 'Cause it's not like, this isn't the days where you'd have YouTube or whatever.
Yeah. Well,
And it literally blew me head off because it was that heavy and nasty. And I basically had to, it took me about 3 months of maybe once a week or so, I'd stick it in my CD player, press play. No, I got a bit further, and I had to make myself, because I knew it was unlike anything I'd ever listened to at that point. But I couldn't listen to it because it was that heavy and that horrible.
do you think, Andy, just to come in there, that um, I mean, we know we could talk a lot about people's listener tastes and streaming and all of those things, but there's something really organic about what you've just described there, and I mean, and I think it's a beautiful thing, because you took a punt on an album because of the artwork, essentially, right?
Yeah,
The look and feel of it, right? It resonated in you, something which you probably couldn't have explained at the time. Maybe you've had more time to think about it since, but it was obviously the thing that like the touch paper of essentially what you do now with Deathwave.
yeah,
But the I find that in the old days, when you only had a certain amount of money to spend on music, and that was the only way you could chance new things, you would invest your time in it. And
yeah,
admittedly, the heaviness of that particular record meant that you had to initiate yourself, and you could only do it in stages because it was
yeah,
such an extreme sounding record.
yeah,
But when you're like now, um, a promoter on the scene, and you're trying to assemble bills and things like that.
yeah.
The Is that something that's still important to you? The look and feel of a brand, the
Yeah,
brand of the band.
yeah. I will sit down and I'll listen to bands. You know, as in I'll sort of, I do, which I don't think many promoters do, which is kind of weird. I'll get an idea. It's like at the moment, I've got one going out maybe on the weekend, maybe tomorrow morning. What I'll do is I'll contact the venue, and I'll normally book a few dates, and I'll say, right, that one I want this, I want that, and I'll pick a genre kind of thing, and then I'll try to find myself a headliner, and then I'll build a lineup around that. But I'll put a list out on social media, say, right, I've got this date, this date, this date, this date. This one I want some black metal. This one I want some thrash. You know, I do it by genre. I don't necessarily announce who I've got as a headliner or something like that. Sometimes I haven't even got one. I've just got, I want to do a thrash gig. Who who do I know who's in thrash? Who, if I post this out, who's going to send me a message and say, we fancy it? And then it'll start a conversation, and I can build a lineup around that. But I said, what I do is, once I've got my first band,
Yeah,
I'll I'll contact someone. I'll think, even if it's bands I've had on before and I've listened to them, I'll sit there and listen to this material again with
yeah.
the view of thinking, who else will work with this? Who do I know? What
That's
do I want to do with it?
that's really interesting to me, because our first guest was Lynn Hampson from SOS,
Yeah.
And they have a very similar approach, but obviously it's different. I mean, we're talking about a festival, but
Yeah.
but it sounds probably very highbrow and a little bit pretentious, but there is an art of curation to what you do. Do you know what I mean?
I definitely think so. Yeah.
And I actually wonder whether or not moving forward, there's probably a bit more of a need as we sort of emerge out of COVID, and again, the COVID conversation comes up a lot about the recovery for the sector, for the scene, for live music in general, and all of those sort of things. Punters not and then of course the cost of living on top of it.
Yeah.
But we, I think maybe the future of grassroots promotion and events is people like yourself being a little bit, perhaps a little bit more bright and visible. When we met at Molly's Chambers at Metal to the Masses, the Heat, I knew who you were, right? And I wonder whether or not that's going to be quite important, because obviously Deathwave and Andy are a badge of quality, aren't they? You know, people know that if they come to one of your gigs, they're going to get a certain thing. Obviously, they're going to get a certain type of show. I mean, I was quite interested in the diversity of the four bands that you put on. Obviously, one was a headliner, non-competing headliner.
Yeah.
But there were three other bands, and they weren't all ear bleeders, to be fair. You know, one was quite proggy. The other one was kind of proto, sort of post metal almost, weren't they?
Yeah, and then the other guys were quite groovy, kind of like a little bit of thrash touches. I thought,
Yeah. So when they're in competition, it's a bit different, isn't it? But what you're
yeah,
basically saying is that you'll put a night on, and then you'll try and assemble the bands, and then there's a little bit of sleight of hand around the curation, I think, is what
yeah,
you're
yeah.
right.
I said I tend to like I've done some of the what I consider the best lines I've ever done is I've done things like I've started off with a quite mellow kind of doom band, and then I've had a heavier, more think Paradise Lost, Mad Iron Brad kind of doom death band, and then I've had a symphonic black metal band, and then I've had a headliner which was a full on old school black metal band, and it sounds like that's four different genres, or it's two genres with two subgenres from each thing,
Yeah,
but on paper, that's a full on mixed bill. But the thing is,
yeah,
because you start off and you do it progressive, at the end of that, I had quite a few people say, "Do you know, that was really good. I really like the way that it progressed through
yeah.
the night, and it went from one end of the spectrum to the other."
I mean, you've had your moments though, Andy, haven't you, where you felt like it's really been a really tough slog. There's been moments in the Deathwave journey where you've
Oh
gone,
yeah,
is this for me?
uh,
You know what I mean?
oh definitely. But admittedly, um, it's one of those strange things. You know, like when going back to right the beginning, and you asked me about uh, is the scene consistent or is it ups and down? See,
Yeah,
this is where, and I said there's two different answers to that. This is kind of where I can kind of unintentionally we've circled right back down where I can explain that. Um, I said I've been in the scene pretty much my entire adult life and before then, kind of thing. I've never, I basically when I said in school, all the other kids were like into the hip hop or the house and trance. We didn't really have like a little subset of grunge, and even if we did, I wouldn't have been one of them anyway because I totally bypassed the grunge thing. I went from like your hair metal and stuff, and then I leaped to after finding that album and learning how to listen to it. I went on this quest for the heaviest, nastiest thing I could find, which led me into all the extreme metal. By the time I was about 20, I was full on death metal kind of thing. But I've also met lots of people. I started, started going to Crazy House every week and going to gigs, and the faces and the people have always been there.
yeah,
And I said, I've got people I've met through the scene, and I've known them for the entire 20 years I've been part of the scene. and
I get glassy eyed
nobody.
when I hear the words crazy
Yeah,
house.
yeah.
You know, I do.
Oh,
Even
back in the day when you learned to headbang properly, because if you fell over, you'd land in a pile of broken glass. So that's how you learned to headbang and not fall over, no matter how drunk you were.
absolutely. When Killing in the Name came on, and I'm talking about not the Simon
Yeah,
Cowell, Attack on Our Senses, but when it first came out, it was like, wow. It was like,
yeah.
what is this? But it was like just so evocative, and like, what's next for Deathwave then? So you've got the final, and the winners will go and play Bloodstock 23. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. Okay. What's the rest of the year look like for you?
I'm currently starting to book out. I've got the my aim is like last in post COVID. Obviously, COVID, no one did anything, and then straight after COVID, I know like Bloodstock wanted me to do like a 1 day kind of like
Like an all day?
yeah, all day like flash fire metal to the masses thing, and I declined. I said I don't fancy doing that. It's not something that kind of jives with how I want to run my events. But I
Mm.
didn't really do any Deathwave events. And then last year I did the Metal to the Masses, and then I did a few shows, which all did quite well. But I was also circling back to the other question: is a lot of the factors on how Deathwave operates is external from Deathwave itself. Bit
Mm.
like this cost of living thing, and so most of the problems Deathwave's had over the years have always been tied to money. But it's my, I don't know. I never got into it to make money.
Mm-hmm.
It slowly got to the point prior to the pandemic where I had about 2 years maybe where it was generally breaking even.
Right. So washing
Uh,
its face, just
yeah,
about.
it was washing its face after years of losing money kind of thing,
Right.
but I still did it because I love it. Um, it was even, I reckon, if the pandemic hadn't happened, would even be in the quite genuinely talking of the territory of it would actually be making money because it was, the pendulum had swung that way, and I said I'd got relatively good at what I'd been doing after learning and all that, and the reputation, but then it comes down to money. So now that money is cost of living crisis is a thing, but I myself have I had to change my career and stuff like that. So I've got myself entrenched into my new career.
Mm.
Uh, you know, sorting myself out, and I've got money to put back into doing Deathwave. So at the moment, I've booked from I'm taking. I've got a show. I've got the final, and then I've got a black metal show late July, and then
Yeah.
I'm taking August off. And then September is I've got a starting fairly early, 2nd of September. Haven't got a lineup for that yet. That's something I'm going to put a post out for and say, see what I can do. I've got an idea, which I won't
Mm-hmm.
go into yet. And then I've got a couple of black metal shows and black death metal shows. I'm going to be doing a charity gig for the Greyhound Trust. But the
Yeah.
aim
What's it
is
called? What's it called?
fast music for fast doggos.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, it's silly, but that's
No,
the
I'm
idea.
we're all dog lovers in the in the JJ house.
Hey, that,
I have two cockapoos, or I like to call them rockapoos, called Sergeant and Pepper.
oh, that's amazing. No. Well, only got a border collie, but I did also have a greyhound who passed away last year. So,
Oh,
but I want to adopt another one once I get the time, a bit more time at home and stuff like that. But actually, it was talking to the Greyhound Trust about the process of adopting another one, which I kind of like, you know what? I don't want to just rock up, say, I'll have one of your dogs. It was like, no, actually, these people are good people. I'm going to do something a bit more than just to adopt one of their dogs. I'm also going to help them fund the next one as well, kind of
that
thing.
sounds that sounds brilliant.
That's the idea.
And one last thing, Andy. I think we're going to have you on again because I think these stories could run and run, and I get the
Oh
impression.
yeah.
We might do the next one round a table in a pub.
I don't mind that.
You know, um, what advice to bands? Because at the end of the day, there's thousands of bands out there. What are you looking for from a band to approach you? What do you want from your bands?
Um, See, that's a hell of a question. That. Uh, Basically, I want you to get in touch with me, have a conversation with me, rather than just send your agent or your manager, or just send me, or the worst ones, just send me this random link. I'm like, I don't know what that is, but have a conversation with me. Say, we're looking for something. We are X. We play this kind of stuff. Have you got anything for us? And as I said, a lot of my lineups quite develop quite organically. Sometimes I'll say, right now, nothing. I'll keep you in mind, and I've got a big database where to stick things in. Sometimes I've had it where I've literally someone will send me a message, say, "Oh, we are such and such," and I was like, "Oh, I haven't got anything for you right now, but I'll keep it in mind." And like 2 days later, someone will message and say, "Oh, we're such and such." I'll have a listen. I'm like, "Come." I go back to this band who I listened to like 2 days ago. I was like, "Do you know what? There's a show there." I'll message them both back and say, "Right, I've got an idea. Here's it. I've got a date here, or I'm going to go and try and get a date. I'll get back to you." And 2 days later, I've got the start of a show, and
So
they're the
you're
best kind of shows.
so you're actually driven by the inspiration that's put in front of you. You're not
Yes,
looking for a certain band. You're looking for someone to sort of inspire you to build a bill.
yes, and
What a great way of doing it. That's
I don't know.
brilliant.
It can be an absolute nightmare sometimes, because it means sometimes
Yeah,
I'm
it's
like,
mental,
don't know what I want to do with this show, but
but brilliantly
when
mental.
it hits, it's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I want to do with this show.
And where normally when we met at Molly's, but where normally what sort of venues are you working with on the Merseyside scene?
I've worked with lots of venues over the years. Unfortunately, I think venues is the biggest thing holding the Liverpool metal scene back a lot of the time, because I've found that a lot of the venues are very, "Oh, we're too posh for that kind of music," or, "Oh no, we might damage our reputation because, like, no, we're like, we're an indie club or whatever."
Yeah, yeah.
So I always find it's a bit of an uphill battle sometimes getting them to actually work with me in the first place. But once I get down there and I put a few shows on, but I'm currently working with Zanzibar, which the staff in there are a lot of luminaries from used to work in the Crazy House, like Brandon, their manager at the moment, used to be one of the, way back. We're talking to the early 2010s.
Yeah.
He was one of the bar staff and one of the guys, the bottle boys, in the Crazy House.
Wow.
And first time I met him, I'd gone down. I was like, "Right, I want to do this," and I was like, he was like, "I know you," and I'm like, "Do you? Oh, is it in a good way?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I remember you. Roaring around the Crazy House, absolutely ratty." I was like, "Oh yeah, don't
That's
worry, most people
amazing.
know me that way, but it's a small world." But
Well, myself and Rick, like our band, myself and Biff, we used to be in a band called Fortuna,
yeah,
and we were like an indie rock band. But our drummer Simon was one of the was one of the in-house DJs at the Crazy House.
oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah, back in the day, which is crazy. So look, I think we're gonna have to pick this conversation again. But Andy, thank you so much for being part of the Alien Nation. Good luck with Deathwave and the next phase of everything. And we'll thank you for banging the drum and keeping things going.
it's all about getting me out at shows and giving me an excuse to get drunk and listen to loud, shouty music, man. That's what it's all about.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers, man.